How men think about older women but never say out loud. There's a secret language men speak when they talk about older women, a language of unspoken thoughts, hidden admiration, and carefully concealed desires that society has trained them never to voice out loud. What if I told you that everything you've been led to believe about how men perceive women over 40 is not just incomplete, but strategically designed to keep you from understanding your true power? Today, we're breaking the silence. We're diving deep into the male psyche to reveal the raw, unfiltered truth about what men really think when they look at an older woman. Some of these revelations will surprise you, others will empower you, but all of them will change the way you see yourself and your value in the dating world forever. This isn't about age. It's about awakening to a truth that's been hidden in plain sight. Welcome back to The Heart Code, where we decode the psychology behind relationships and reveal the truths that transform lives. If you're new here, you've just discovered a channel dedicated to empowering women with the psychological insights they need to navigate modern relationships with confidence and clarity. Before we dive deep into today's eye-opening topic, I need you to do something important. Hit that like button right now, because this video contains information that challenges everything mainstream media wants you to believe about aging and desirability. Your like helps this message reach more women who need to hear this truth. And while you're at it, subscribe to the channel and turn on that notification bell so you never miss our videos. We post powerful content like this regularly, and trust me, you don't want to miss a single episode. Also, drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts as we go through this journey today. Your insights and experiences matter, and our community thrives on these conversations. And if you really want to support this channel and help us continue creating content that empowers women, consider leaving a super thanks. Your support means everything and allows us to keep bringing you this life-changing information completely free. Share this video with every woman in your life who needs to hear this message. Now, let's unlock these secrets together. The fundamental shift in male perception. Let's start with a truth that will reshape everything you think you know about male attraction. When a man encounters a woman over 40, something profound happens in his psychological processing that he will almost never articulate. There's an immediate instinctive categorization that takes place, but it's not what you've been led to believe. Society has programmed you to think that men see older women as less desirable, as expired goods, as women past their prime. But here's what's actually happening in the male mind, and this is where it gets fascinating. When a man looks at an older woman, particularly one who carries herself with confidence and self-assuredness, his brain engages in a complex evaluation process that involves multiple layers of attraction, intimidation, curiosity, and desire. The first thing that crosses his mind is not what you think. It's not about wrinkles or age-related physical changes. The first thought is almost always about competence and capability. Men are wired to respect and be attracted to competence. An older woman radiates a type of competence that younger women simply cannot fake. This competence triggers something primal in the male psyche. Here's what men think but never say. They find the self-assuredness of older women incredibly magnetic. There's an absence of the games, the testing, the emotional turbulence that often characterizes interactions with younger women. Men notice this immediately. They think about how refreshing it would be to interact with someone who knows herself, who has already done the work of self-discovery, who doesn't need validation from every interaction. But why don't they say this out loud? Because admitting attraction to an older woman challenges the narrative that society has built around youth worship. It challenges their peer group's expectations. It challenges the image they've been sold about what they should want. Let's go deeper into the specific thoughts that run through a man's mind when he sees an older woman who takes care of herself, who dresses well, who moves through the world with purpose. His immediate thought is often one of respect mixed with curiosity. He wonders about her story. He wonders what experiences have shaped her. He wonders what it would be like to be with someone who has already lived, who has stories to tell, who has wisdom to share. This curiosity is powerful, but it's also threatening to his ego in a way that he struggles to articulate. You see, men have been conditioned to be the ones with experience, the ones with wisdom, the ones who lead and teach. An older woman disrupts this dynamic. She doesn't need him to show her the world because she's already seen it. She doesn't need him to teach her about life because she's already lived it. This creates a paradox in the male mind. On one hand, it's incredibly attractive. On the other hand, it's destabilizing to his sense of masculine identity. So what does he do with these thoughts? He keeps them locked away, never voicing them, because to do so would be to admit that the traditional power dynamic doesn't apply here. The sexual psychology men hide now. We need to talk about something that makes men extremely uncomfortable to admit: the sexual thoughts they have about older women. This is where the gap between what men think and what they say becomes a canyon. Let's be direct and unflinching here, because your empowerment depends on understanding this truth. Men have been culturally programmed to express sexual interest in younger women. It's safe, it's expected. It aligns with every movie, advertisement, and social norm they've ever encountered. But the private thoughts? Those tell a completely different story. Here's what happens in a man's mind when he encounters a sexually confident older woman. First, there's an immediate recognition that this is someone who knows what she wants. Men find this incredibly arousing, but they rarely admit it because it transfers power in a way that makes them vulnerable. With younger women, men often feel they're in the teaching role, the experienced one, the one with knowledge to impart. This gives them a sense of control and superiority that feeds their ego. But an older woman who is comfortable with her sexuality, she doesn't need teaching. She's already explored her desires. She knows her body. She can communicate her needs. This terrifies and excites men in equal measure. Men think about the confidence an older woman would bring to intimate moments. They imagine a partner who doesn't hide behind false modesty, who doesn't play coy games, who can be direct about pleasure and satisfaction. These thoughts cross their minds regularly, but voicing them feels like admitting to a desire that society tells them they shouldn't have. There's also a fantasy element that men rarely discuss. Many men harbor curiosity about what intimacy would be like with someone who has more experience than they do. It challenges their ego, yes, but it also intrigues them deeply. The pornography industry has picked up on this unspoken male desire, which is why content featuring older women has seen explosive growth. Men are consuming this content in private while publicly maintaining the fiction that they're only interested in younger partners. This disconnect between private desire and public performance reveals everything you need to know about how men really think about older women. They desire what they pretend to dismiss. They fantasize about what they claim doesn't interest them. They seek out in private what they would never admit to wanting in public. Let's talk about the specific sexual thoughts men have but never verbalize. They think about the lack of drama. They imagine intimate encounters without the emotional gymnastics, without the need for constant reassurance, without the performance pressure that often comes with younger partners. They think about honesty and directness in the bedroom. They wonder what it would be like to be with someone who can say exactly what she wants without embarrassment or hesitation. These thoughts are incredibly common, yet men almost never share them, even with their closest friends, because to do so would be to admit that the cultural narrative about desirability is false. There's another layer to this that we need to explore. Men think about the body confidence that some older women possess, not the false confidence that comes from societal approval, but the genuine self-acceptance that comes from having lived in your body for decades. They find this profoundly attractive because it removes a layer of performativity from intimate encounters. They don't have to constantly reassure or validate. They can simply be present. This is something men crave but feel they cannot ask for because it would reveal their own insecurities about performance and approval. The emotional intelligence factor. Here's where we uncover one of the most significant truths about male psychology and older women. Men are acutely aware of the emotional intelligence gap that often exists between older and younger women, and this awareness shapes their thoughts in profound ways. When a man interacts with an older woman, one of the first things he notices is how she handles emotional situations. She doesn't create drama where none exists. She doesn't engage in emotional manipulation tactics. She communicates clearly. She has boundaries. She respects his. This observation triggers a cascade of thoughts that men almost never voice out loud. Men think about how much easier life would be with a partner who possesses genuine emotional maturity. They think about coming home to peace instead of chaos. They think about conversations that resolve conflicts instead of escalating them. They think about a partner who doesn't need them to be a mind reader, who can express needs clearly, who understands that relationships require work from both people. These thoughts are constant background noise in many men's minds, especially those who have been through relationships with emotionally immature partners. But saying this out loud feels like betrayal of their age group, criticism of younger women they're supposed to prefer, and admission that they might not be the emotionally stable ones in the relationship. Here's what men notice but never say. Older women don't play games. The testing behaviors that characterize early-stage dating with younger women are absent. There's no deliberate ignoring of texts to create anxiety. There's no manufactured jealousy to prove interest. There's no emotional withholding to establish power. Men notice this absence immediately, and it's like breathing fresh air after being in a smoke-filled room. They think about how refreshing it would be to build something real with someone who has moved past these adolescent relationship strategies. But admitting this would mean admitting they've been tolerating behavior that makes them miserable. And that's a difficult truth for men to face. The emotional intelligence of older women also manifests in conflict resolution, and men are intensely aware of this. When disagreements arise, an emotionally mature older woman can discuss issues directly without resorting to silent treatment, passive aggression, or emotional blackmail. Men know this. They value this. They fantasize about this. But they don't talk about it because to do so would be to admit that they've been accepting unhealthy communication patterns in their relationships. It would mean acknowledging that many of the conflicts they've endured were unnecessary and manufactured. Men also think about the emotional stability that older women bring to relationships. There's a groundedness, a sense of self that doesn't require constant external validation. Men find this incredibly appealing because it means they're not responsible for their partner's entire emotional well-being. They can be supportive without being consumed. They can have bad days without it triggering a relationship crisis. They can be human without it being interpreted as rejection or abandonment. These thoughts occupy significant mental space for men, particularly those who have been in relationships that felt emotionally exhausting. But voicing these thoughts feels disloyal and critical, so they remain unspoken. There's another dimension to the emotional intelligence factor that men notice but rarely discuss: the absence of competition and comparison. Older women who are secure in themselves don't constantly compare themselves to other women. They don't need their partner to prove they're the prettiest, the youngest, the most desirable. This absence of competition is remarkably freeing for men. They think about how peaceful it would be to have a partner who doesn't need constant reassurance about her attractiveness relative to every other woman in the room. They imagine a relationship where their attention isn't being tested every moment. But again, saying this out loud would reveal their exhaustion with dynamics they're supposed to enjoy. The independence paradox. Let's explore one of the most fascinating contradictions in male psychology regarding older women. Men are conditioned to want to be needed, to be the provider, to be the hero in their partner's story. This conditioning runs deep. Yet when they encounter an older woman who has built her own life, established her own career, created her own financial stability, and cultivated her own interests, something unexpected happens in their minds. They find it incredibly attractive while simultaneously feeling threatened by it. This paradox creates a complex internal dialogue that men almost never verbalize. Here's what men think when they see a woman who doesn't need them financially or practically. They feel both relieved and displaced. The relief comes from understanding that this woman is choosing to be with them not because she needs financial support or security, but because she genuinely wants to. This removes a layer of uncertainty that plagues many relationships. Men wonder constantly whether they're valued for who they are or what they provide. With an older, independent woman, that question answers itself. She doesn't need what he provides materially, so if she's interested, it must be about him as a person. This thought is deeply validating, yet men rarely express it because it reveals their insecurity about their own worth beyond their utility. The displacement feeling comes from a different place. Men have been raised with narratives about being needed, about being the strong provider, about being essential to their partner's survival and well-being. An independent older woman challenges all of this. She was fine before he arrived. She'll be fine if he leaves. She doesn't need rescuing. She's not looking for someone to complete her because she's already whole. This realization triggers thoughts in men that they struggle to process. They think about what their role is, if not provider and protector. They think about what they bring to the table if practical utility isn't the answer. They think about whether they measure up as human beings, stripped of all the traditional masculine value propositions. Men think about the freedom that comes with dating an independent woman. They imagine not having to bear the weight of another person's entire financial well-being. They think about being able to make career choices based on passion rather than necessity. They consider the possibility of a true partnership where both people contribute and neither is dependent. These thoughts are appealing, yet men don't often share them because it sounds like they don't want to take care of their partner, which conflicts with masculine identity norms. So they keep these thoughts private, enjoying the fantasy while maintaining the public persona of traditional provider. There's also a profound thought that crosses men's minds about independence and respect. They think about how they respect independent women more. This is a difficult truth for men to admit because it implies they don't fully respect women who are dependent on them. But the thought is there. When a man knows a woman has built her own life and achieved her own success, he sees her as an equal in a way that's harder to maintain in traditional dependent relationships. He thinks about intellectual conversations with a peer. He imagines sharing his professional challenges with someone who understands from her own experience. He contemplates a partnership of equals rather than a caretaker dynamic. But expressing these thoughts feels like criticism of the traditional relationship model, so they remain unspoken. Men also have private thoughts about the pressure that independence removes. With younger or less established women, men often feel performance pressure. They need to impress. They need to prove their worth. They need to demonstrate their success and capability constantly. With an independent older woman, much of this pressure evaporates. She's seen success. She's achieved her own. She's not measuring his apartment against her fantasies or his car against her expectations. This absence of judgment based on material markers is something men think about often. They imagine how freeing it would be to be valued for character rather than acquisition. Yet they don't speak this thought because it reveals their awareness that much of their worth in the dating market has been reduced to what they own and earn. The maturity they crave but can't request. We need to talk about something that sits at the core of male psychology but is almost never discussed openly. Men crave maturity in their partners but feel unable to ask for it directly. This creates an internal conflict that shapes their thoughts about older women in significant ways. Let's unpack this carefully because understanding it will give you tremendous insight into male behavior and hidden desires. When men think about older women, one of the most consistent internal dialogues revolves around maturity, stability, and the absence of chaos. Men think constantly about what it would be like to be in a relationship without constant emotional turbulence. They imagine conversations that stay on topic instead of spiraling into tangential grievances from years past. They think about disagreements that end in resolution rather than days of cold silence. They wonder what it would feel like to have a partner who doesn't create tests and scenarios to prove love or commitment. These thoughts occupy significant mental real estate, yet men almost never express them because doing so would be admitting that they find aspects of their current or past relationships exhausting. It would be complaining about behavior they're supposed to find endearing or cute or passionately dramatic. Here's what men think but never say. They're tired. They're tired of decoding indirect communication. They're tired of guessing what's wrong when their partner says, "Nothing is wrong, but clearly something is wrong." They're tired of walking on eggshells. They're tired of spontaneous emotional explosions. They're tired of everything being a potential trigger for a relationship crisis. When men encounter older women who have moved past these communication patterns, their first thought is often relief. They think about how peaceful life could be. They imagine actually enjoying their relationship instead of managing it. But expressing this feels like failure, like admission that they can't handle relationship complexity, so they keep quiet. Men think about the maturity gap in decision-making. Older women tend to make decisions based on thoughtful consideration rather than emotional impulse. Men notice this. They think about financial stability without impulsive shopping sprees. They imagine making joint decisions through rational discussion rather than emotional manipulation. They consider what it would be like to plan a future with someone who thinks long-term rather than seeking immediate gratification. These thoughts are incredibly common among men, particularly those who have been in relationships that felt financially or emotionally unstable. But voicing these thoughts feels judgmental, so they remain internal observations. There's another aspect of maturity that men think about constantly: the ability to be alone. Older women have typically developed the capacity to be comfortable with themselves, to enjoy solitude, to have their own lives and interests. Men find this incredibly attractive because it means they're not responsible for entertaining their partner every moment. They think about having time for their own interests without guilt. They imagine pursuing hobbies without it being interpreted as rejection. They consider what it would be like to have a partner who encourages independence rather than clinging or creating drama around time spent apart. These are powerful desires that men harbor but rarely express, because they're told that wanting space means they don't care enough. Men also have thoughts about the maturity that comes with life experience. Older women have typically faced challenges, overcome obstacles, experienced loss, and developed resilience. Men think about what it would mean to have a partner who understands that life isn't always easy, who doesn't crumble at the first difficulty, who has coping mechanisms beyond complaining or creating drama. They imagine facing life's challenges with a partner who brings strength rather than adding to the stress. They think about building something together with someone who understands that success requires patience, persistence, and sometimes sacrifice. But expressing these thoughts feels like criticism of less experienced partners, so men keep them locked away. The communication clarity they desire. Let's examine one of the most significant areas where men's thoughts about older women diverge from what they say publicly: communication. Men have profound thoughts about the communication style of older women, and these thoughts reveal desires they can barely acknowledge to themselves, let alone express out loud. When a man interacts with an older woman who communicates clearly and directly, something shifts in his mental landscape. He experiences a type of relief so profound that it almost feels like a release from prison. Let me explain why this matters so much. Men think about the exhaustion that comes from indirect communication, the hints they're supposed to pick up on, the mind reading they're expected to perform, the tests disguised as normal conversation, the questions that aren't really questions but loaded traps. When men encounter an older woman who simply says what she means, their immediate thought is often shock, followed by gratitude. They think about how much mental energy they spend trying to decode communication, trying to figure out what their partner really means versus what she's actually saying. The clarity that older women often bring to communication is like switching from a foreign language to your native tongue. Everything becomes easier. But men don't talk about this because it would mean admitting they struggle with communication dynamics they're supposed to naturally navigate. Here's a specific example of what goes through men's minds. An older woman might say directly, "I'd like to spend more time together on weekends." A younger woman might say nothing but create scenarios that punish him for not spending time together, forcing him to figure out the real issue through trial and error and emotional conflict. Men are acutely aware of this difference. They think about how the direct approach respects their intelligence and treats them as an equal partner, capable of making decisions with full information. They appreciate being treated as an adult rather than a child who needs to learn lessons through punishment and reward. But expressing this appreciation feels like betrayal of partners who use indirect communication, so they remain silent. Men think constantly about the absence of passive aggression. When an older woman is upset, she typically addresses it directly rather than punishing through subtle acts of aggression, silent treatment, or deliberately hurtful behavior disguised as something else. Men notice this absence immediately because passive aggression is crazy-making. It creates an environment where you're being punished, but you're not supposed to acknowledge the punishment. Where you're in trouble, but you're gaslit into believing nothing is wrong. When this dynamic is absent, men's first thought is usually, "This is what healthy communication feels like." But they rarely say this because it would mean labeling previous relationships as unhealthy, and that's an uncomfortable truth. There's another layer to communication that occupies men's thoughts: the ability to discuss difficult topics without emotional escalation. Older women have typically developed the capacity to have hard conversations without turning them into relationship-ending crises. Men think about this capability constantly. They imagine being able to discuss financial concerns without triggering emotional meltdowns. They think about addressing sexual issues without their partner interpreting it as rejection or inadequacy. They consider what it would be like to give honest feedback without walking through an emotional minefield. These thoughts represent some of the deepest desires men have regarding relationships, yet they're almost never vocalized because men are taught that these desires are unreasonable or insensitive. Men also think about the confidence required for direct communication. When a woman can communicate clearly and directly, it demonstrates a level of self-assurance that men find incredibly attractive. It shows that she's secure enough to be vulnerable, confident enough to express needs, and mature enough to handle adult conversation. Men recognize that this confidence comes from life experience and self-knowledge. They think about what it would mean to be with someone who has done this psychological work, who knows herself well enough to articulate her needs and boundaries. But admitting that this is attractive would be admitting that many of the women they've dated lack this quality, so the thought remains private. The fantasy of being chosen. Now we're going to explore psychological territory that men find extremely difficult to acknowledge. The profound significance they attach to being chosen by an older woman. This touches on male insecurities so deep that most men aren't even consciously aware of them. But these thoughts exist, and they shape male behavior and attraction patterns in powerful ways. When a man imagines or experiences being pursued or chosen by an older woman, a cascade of thoughts and emotions flood through him that challenge his entire understanding of his own value and desirability. Let's start with the fundamental thought that crosses men's minds. If an older woman wants me, it must be because of who I am, not what I can do for her. This thought is revolutionary for men because so much of their worth in the dating market is tied to utility. Can he provide? Can he protect? Can he solve problems? Can he offer security? With younger women, men often wonder if they're valued as people or as instruments. But an older woman who has her own security, her own success, her own life doesn't need instrumentality. If she chooses a man, it's because she wants him specifically. Men think about this constantly. They fantasize about being wanted for their personality, their character, their mind, their company rather than their function. But admitting this fantasy would reveal the insecurity underneath, so they keep it hidden. Men think about validation in ways they rarely discuss. Being desired by an older woman feels like validation from someone whose opinion actually matters. She's seen more, she's experienced more, she's been with other men, she knows what she wants. If she wants him, it carries weight. That approval from less experienced women doesn't. Men think about this hierarchical validation constantly. It's like receiving praise from a master rather than a novice. The approval means more because it comes from a place of knowledge and experience. But expressing this thought would diminish the perceived value of approval from younger women, which men are supposed to prize above all else, so they remain silent about it. There's a fantasy element that men harbor but almost never voice. The fantasy of being seduced by an older woman. This fantasy isn't primarily sexual, although that component exists. The deeper fantasy is about being chosen so deliberately that she pursues him. In most of men's experience, they're the ones pursuing, proving their worth, trying to convince women of their value. The fantasy of being pursued by someone who knows what she wants and has decided he's worth the effort reverses the entire dynamic. Men think about what it would feel like to be wanted that directly, to be pursued that deliberately, to be chosen that specifically. This fantasy contradicts the masculine narrative about being the hunter, so men rarely acknowledge it even to themselves. Men also think about the confidence boost that comes from being with an older woman. If he can attract and keep a woman who has options, who has experience, who doesn't need him for security, what does that say about him? It says he's valuable beyond his utility. It says he's interesting beyond his youth. It says he's desirable beyond his earning potential. Men think about this ego validation constantly. They imagine the confidence they would feel walking into a room with a woman who chose them from a position of power rather than need. But admitting they want this validation would reveal insecurities about their own worth, so the thought stays internal. There's another dimension to being chosen that occupies men's minds: the absence of settling. Men worry constantly about whether their partner settled for them. Is he her first choice or her safe option? Does she really want him, or is he just good enough? With an older woman who has options and doesn't need a relationship for security or social acceptance, this question answers itself. If she's with him, she's not settling, she's choosing. This provides a psychological security that men crave but can't request. They think about what it would feel like to know with certainty that they're wanted, not tolerated, that they're desired, not accepted as adequate. These thoughts reveal deep insecurities that men's socialization tells them they shouldn't have. The experience intimidation factor. We need to address one of the most complex psychological dynamics that shapes men's thoughts about older women: the simultaneous attraction to and intimidation by experience. This internal conflict creates a fascinating psychological tension that men almost never discuss openly. When a man thinks about being with an older woman, particularly one who has clearly lived a full life, accumulated diverse experiences, and developed worldliness, his mind goes to places both exciting and terrifying. Let's unpack this carefully because it reveals fundamental truths about male psychology and insecurity. Men think about the life experience older women possess, and this thought comes with layers of complexity. On one hand, they find it incredibly attractive. A woman who has traveled, who has stories, who has perspectives shaped by actual experience rather than theoretical knowledge, represents intellectual stimulation that men crave but rarely find. Men think about conversations that go beyond surface level. They imagine sharing meals with someone who can discuss art she's seen, cultures she's experienced, books she's read, ideas she's contemplated. This intellectual compatibility is something men value highly, but often can't find in partners from their own age group or younger. The thought of mental stimulation is incredibly appealing, but here's where the intimidation comes in. With all that experience comes comparison. Men think about how they measure up against the other men she's known. They wonder if they're interesting enough, worldly enough, sophisticated enough. They imagine her internal comparisons and worry they'll fall short. These thoughts create anxiety that men rarely voice, because admitting to feeling inadequate conflicts with masculine identity. They're supposed to be confident, self-assured, unshakable. But the truth is that men feel deeply insecure when faced with someone who has more experience than they do. This insecurity shapes their behavior and their silence about attraction to older women. Men think specifically about sexual experience, and this is where intimidation becomes acute. They wonder how they compare to previous partners. They worry about performance. They fear that their moves, their techniques, their approaches might seem elementary to someone who has been with men who knew what they were doing. These thoughts are constant when men consider being with older women. They imagine scenarios where their inexperience shows, where they disappoint, where they're found lacking. But admitting these fears would be admitting to sexual insecurity, which men are taught to never reveal. So they keep these thoughts locked away while they manifest as complex behavior patterns around older women. There's another dimension of experience that men think about: the emotional sophistication that comes with having been through relationships, breakups, heartbreak, and healing. Older women have typically developed emotional resilience and perspective that younger women haven't had time to acquire. Men think about what it means to be with someone who has already done the work of understanding herself, healing her wounds, and developing healthy relationship patterns. On one hand, this is incredibly attractive because it promises a healthier dynamic. On the other hand, it's intimidating because it means she'll see through his defenses, recognize his patterns, and call out his immature behavior. Men think about this X-ray vision that emotional experience provides, and it makes them feel exposed in ways they don't know how to handle. Men also have thoughts about the professional experience older women possess. Many older women have established careers, developed expertise, achieved recognition in their fields. Men think about what it means to date someone who is professionally accomplished, perhaps more accomplished than they are. This challenges traditional masculine identity in profound ways. Men are supposed to be the successful ones, the accomplished ones, the ones with impressive careers. When faced with a woman whose resume outshines theirs, men experience complex emotions. They admire it, they're attracted to it, but they're also threatened by it. These contradictory thoughts create internal conflict that men rarely resolve. They simply carry both feelings simultaneously, attracted and intimidated in equal measure. There's a specific thought pattern that emerges around the experience gap: imposter syndrome. Men think about whether they're mature enough, sophisticated enough, accomplished enough to be with a woman who has done and seen so much. They wonder if they'll seem childish by comparison. They worry that their interests will seem trivial, their concerns petty, their worldview limited. These thoughts of inadequacy are powerful, yet men don't express them because doing so would be admitting to feeling like they don't measure up. Masculine socialization demands confidence, so men bury these insecurities and sometimes avoid older women altogether, rather than face these uncomfortable feelings. The domestic partnership fantasy. Let's explore a category of thoughts that might surprise you: men's fantasies about domestic partnership with older women. This isn't about traditional gender roles or seeking a mother figure. It's something much more nuanced and psychologically complex. When men think about building a life with an older woman, specific thoughts and images cross their minds that reveal desires they rarely acknowledge. Understanding these thoughts will give you profound insight into what men actually want versus what they're culturally conditioned to say they want. Men think about coming home to peace. This thought is so common and so powerful that it shapes major life decisions, even when men aren't consciously aware of it. They imagine opening the door to a home that feels calm rather than chaotic. They think about evenings without manufactured drama. They envision conversations about their day that don't turn into emotional landmines. They picture weekends without relationship crises that need managing. When men imagine domestic life with an emotionally mature, older woman, this peaceful home environment is one of the first things that comes to mind. But they don't talk about this because it sounds like they don't want passion or excitement, when really they just want to stop walking on eggshells in their own home. Here's what men think about in domestic partnership terms: actual partnership. They imagine making decisions together through rational discussion. They think about managing a household where both people contribute their strengths without keeping score. They envision financial planning with someone who understands budgets, savings, and long-term thinking. They consider what it would be like to handle life's logistics with a competent partner, rather than feeling like they're managing everything alone while also managing their partner's emotions about everything. These thoughts are incredibly common but rarely vocalized because men are supposed to be the leaders, the decision makers, the ones in charge. Admitting they want true partnership sounds like admitting they can't handle leadership alone. Men think about the domestic labor division in very specific ways. They imagine being with someone who doesn't create artificial crises about household chores, who can have mature conversations about fair distribution of labor, who understands that both people working means both people contribute at home. Older women have typically moved past the testing behaviors around domestic work. They're not trying to prove a point or make a statement. They're trying to build a functional household with a partner. Men think about this practical approach constantly. They imagine having conversations about who does what based on preference, schedule, and capability, rather than based on gender roles or emotional manipulation. But discussing this openly feels like admitting they've been in dysfunctional domestic situations, so they keep quiet. There's a financial dimension to men's domestic partnership thoughts that they almost never voice. Men think about shared financial goals with someone who understands money, who has financial discipline, who thinks long-term about security and retirement. They imagine building wealth together rather than constantly managing spending impulses. They think about making big purchases through joint decision-making rather than dealing with surprise shopping sprees or emotional spending. They consider what it would be like to have a partner who contributes financially and thinks strategically about family finances. These thoughts occupy significant mental space because financial stress is one of the leading causes of relationship problems. But men don't talk about wanting a financially responsible partner because it sounds materialistic or unromantic. Men also have thoughts about the home environment older women create. They think about a home that reflects adult taste rather than college dormitory aesthetics. They imagine a space that's comfortable, welcoming, and reflects the care of someone who has developed their own style over years of living. They consider what it means to build a home with someone who knows what they like, who can make decisions about furniture and decoration without needing constant approval, who has the confidence to create a space that feels like home rather than a showroom. These might seem like superficial thoughts, but they represent something deeper: the desire to build a life with someone who has fully formed preferences and the confidence to express them. There's another layer to the domestic partnership fantasy that men rarely acknowledge: the absence of parenting their partner. Men think about what it would mean to not have to manage their partner's emotions, schedule, responsibilities, and life logistics. They imagine being with someone who remembers their own appointments, handles their own obligations, manages their own relationships with family and friends, without needing constant reminding or managing. This desire isn't about wanting someone to take care of them. It's about wanting a relationship between two adults, rather than an adult and someone who needs managing. But expressing this desire sounds critical and harsh, so men keep these thoughts to themselves. The social perception pressure. Now we need to examine one of the most powerful forces shaping men's silence about older women: social perception pressure. This is where we see the clearest gap between what men think privately and what they're willing to acknowledge publicly. Men carry thoughts about social judgment that profoundly influence their behavior and their willingness to pursue or admit attraction to older women. Understanding this pressure is crucial because it explains so much of the contradiction between male desire and male action. Let's be unflinchingly honest about what goes through men's minds regarding social perception. Men think constantly about how they'll be perceived by their peer group if they date an older woman. Their first thought is often about judgment, ridicule, and loss of social status among other men. Male social hierarchies are brutal, and stepping outside the acceptable norm of dating younger brings swift social consequences. Men think about the comments they'll face. They imagine being mocked for being with an older woman. They anticipate questions about why they couldn't get someone younger. They fear being seen as settling or as somehow inadequate for not landing a younger partner. These fears are intense and persistent, even when men are genuinely attracted to an older woman. The social cost feels prohibitively high. Here's what men think but won't say: they care more about peer approval than they'd like to admit. Male friendships often revolve around competition and status signaling. Dating is one arena where men compete for status. Youth is coded as a status marker in female partners. An older partner, regardless of her actual qualities, represents lower status in male social hierarchies. Men think about this status loss constantly. They weigh genuine attraction and compatibility against social standing within their peer group. Often the social pressure wins, even when the attraction is strong. Men will literally choose loneliness or incompatibility over social judgment from other men. But admitting that they're this influenced by peer pressure would be admitting to weakness, so they rationalize their choices differently. Men think about family pressure and judgment. They imagine introducing an older woman to their family and the questions, the surprise, the potential disapproval. They think about what their mother will say, what their father will think, how their siblings will react. Family expectations around appropriate age gaps are powerful, and men are acutely aware of these expectations. They think about holiday dinners where age becomes an unspoken issue. They imagine family gatherings where their partner is closer in age to their parents than to them, and the discomfort that creates. These thoughts create anxiety that often prevents men from even pursuing connections with older women they find attractive. There's a specific thought pattern around public presentation. Men think about what strangers will think when they see them with an older partner. They imagine the assumptions people will make. Will people think she's his mother? Will they see him as a gold digger? Will they judge her for dating younger? Men think about these public perceptions and the discomfort they create. They imagine walking into restaurants, attending events, meeting new people, and the inevitable moment when the age difference becomes apparent. These thoughts create anticipatory anxiety that shapes their behavior. Many men simply avoid the situation entirely rather than face ongoing public judgment. Men also have thoughts about the female perspective on their dating choices. They worry that dating an older woman will make them less attractive to younger women in the future. It's a calculated thought about preserving options. If things don't work out with the older woman, will having dated older hurt his chances with younger women later? Men think about their relationship history as a resume that impacts future opportunities. This transactional thinking about relationships is something men rarely acknowledge, but it influences decisions significantly. They worry that dating older women might label them or pigeonhole them in ways that limit future choices. There's another dimension of social perception that occupies men's thoughts: the questioning of their masculinity. In many social circles, dating an older woman raises questions about a man's ability to attract women his own age or younger. Men think about being perceived as weak, as settling, as somehow deficient in masculine appeal. These perceptions attack core identity elements that men have built their sense of self around. The thought of being seen as less masculine is profoundly threatening, so men avoid situations that might trigger this perception. They'll suppress genuine attraction rather than face questions about their masculinity. Men think about the narrative they're supposed to follow. Society tells men they should date younger, that their value increases with age, while women's decreases, that success means having access to younger partners. Men internalize this narrative deeply when they find themselves attracted to older women. It contradicts the script they've been sold. They think about how this attraction doesn't fit the story they're supposed to be living. They wonder if something is wrong with them for wanting something different from what they're told they should want. These thoughts create internal conflict between genuine desire and socialized expectations. Usually, socialized expectations win because the psychological cost of deviating is too high. The authenticity attraction. Let's examine one of the most powerful but unspoken aspects of male attraction to older women: the pull toward authenticity. This gets to something fundamental about what men desire but feel unable to request directly. When men interact with older women who have moved past the performance of femininity that society demands, something profound happens psychologically. They encounter a type of realness that they find deeply attractive, but also somewhat disorienting because it challenges their conditioning. Let's explore the specific thoughts men have about this authenticity and why they remain largely unspoken. Men think about the absence of performative behavior. Older women who are comfortable with themselves have typically stopped performing for male approval. They've stopped pretending to be less intelligent to protect male egos. They've stopped fake laughing at jokes that aren't funny. They've stopped hiding their knowledge to seem non-threatening. They've stopped modulating their opinions to seem agreeable. Men notice this absence of performance immediately, and their reaction is complex. On one level, they find it refreshing and attractive. They think about how freeing it would be to interact with someone who is genuinely herself rather than a carefully curated version designed to appeal to male preferences. But on another level, it's unsettling because the performance serves male comfort, and its absence requires them to engage with a real person rather than a fantasy. Here's what men think but struggle to articulate. They're attracted to women who don't need their approval. This seems counterintuitive because men are conditioned to value being needed and to enjoy female attention and approval seeking. But there's a deeper truth. When a woman doesn't need male approval to feel valuable, when she's already validated herself through her life accomplishments and self-knowledge, she becomes incredibly magnetic. Men think about what it means to be with someone who is whole without him. It means he's wanted, not needed. It means the relationship is about genuine connection rather than filling a void. It means she sees him clearly rather than projecting fantasies onto him. These thoughts are profound, but men rarely voice them because it challenges the narrative about being needed that they've built their identities around. Men think about the authenticity in self-presentation. Older women are typically past the point of wearing uncomfortable clothing to be sexy, maintaining unsustainable beauty routines to be attractive, or presenting a false version of themselves to appeal to male fantasies. They dress for themselves. They look how they want to look. They present themselves authentically. Men think about this comfort with self and find it attractive in ways they can't fully explain. It signals a type of confidence and self-acceptance that is genuinely magnetic, but men don't talk about this attraction because it would mean admitting that much of what younger women do for male attention is performance that becomes tiresome, and that truth is uncomfortable to acknowledge. There's a thought pattern around intellectual authenticity that men have but seldom express. Older women typically stop hiding their intelligence or downplaying their knowledge. They engage in conversations fully, sharing insights, challenging ideas, bringing their full intellectual capacity to interactions. Men think about this intellectual engagement and how stimulating it is. They imagine conversations where they don't have to hold back, where they can engage fully without worrying about seeming intimidating or making their partner feel inferior. They consider what it would be like to be with someone who brings equal intellectual energy to the relationship. These thoughts are constant, but expressing them feels like criticism of women who do perform intellectual subordination, so men stay silent. Men also think about emotional authenticity. Older women who have done psychological work are typically more in touch with their actual emotions and able to express them genuinely rather than through manipulation or drama. When an older woman says she's upset, she's usually actually upset about what she says she's upset about, not running some complex emotional test. Men think about this emotional honesty and how much simpler it makes relationships. They imagine actually understanding their partner's emotional state, rather than having to decode performances. They consider what it means to have a partner who shares her actual feelings, rather than creating scenarios to trigger certain responses. This emotional straightforwardness is something men crave intensely, but feel unable to request because it would mean labeling much female communication as inauthentic. There's another layer to authenticity that occupies men's thoughts: the acceptance of imperfection. Older women have typically made peace with their physical imperfections, personality quirks, and life limitations. They're not trying to present a perfect image. They're comfortable being flawed humans. Men think about what it would mean to be with someone who doesn't expect perfection from herself and therefore won't demand it from him. They imagine relationships where both people can be imperfect, where mistakes are normal, where growth is expected rather than fully formed perfection. This acceptance of mutual humanity is profoundly appealing to men who are tired of performing masculine perfection. But admitting they want this acceptance would mean admitting they're not perfect, which conflicts with masculine identity norms. The long-term relationship perspective. We need to explore the thoughts men have about long-term relationships with older women, because this is where some of the most significant psychological processing occurs. When men think beyond initial attraction and imagine actual committed relationships, marriages, or life partnerships with older women, specific concerns and considerations cross their minds. These thoughts are rarely shared because they expose vulnerabilities and fears that men are taught to suppress. But understanding these thoughts gives you insight into male psychology that most men don't even share with themselves. Let's go deep into this territory. Men think about aging timelines. When considering a relationship with an older woman, particularly if the age gap is significant, men do mental math about aging. They think about what ages they'll both be in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. They consider health trajectories, mortality timelines, and the likelihood of becoming a caregiver. These thoughts aren't romantic, and men feel guilty having them, but they're there. They think about outliving their partner by decades potentially. They imagine late-life loneliness. They consider what it means to commit to someone knowing the age differential will become more pronounced over time. Men rarely voice these calculations because they sound cold and unromantic, but they influence relationship decisions significantly. Here's what men think about long-term partnership. They wonder about energy level compatibility. They think about whether an older partner will want to travel, adventure, and explore as they age together. They imagine future scenarios and wonder if age will become a limiting factor. They consider whether their activity preferences will remain aligned or diverge as the age gap plays out over decades. These thoughts aren't necessarily rejections of older women, but they're realistic considerations about long-term compatibility. Men think about maintaining an active lifestyle and whether an older partner will be able or willing to share that lifestyle long-term. They don't discuss these thoughts because they sound ageist and superficial, but they're part of the calculus of long-term relationship planning. Men think about children. For men who want children or aren't certain they don't want children, dating an older woman raises immediate questions. They think about biological clocks and fertility windows. They consider whether children are possible, practical, or wise with an older partner. They do mental math about ages when children would be born, in school, graduating. They imagine being parents at different life stages. These thoughts are significant relationship decision factors, yet men rarely discuss them directly with older women they're dating because the conversation feels uncomfortable and potentially hurtful. Instead, they process these thoughts privately and often let them influence whether they pursue or continue relationships without explicit discussion. There's a financial dimension to men's long-term thinking that they almost never voice. Men think about retirement timelines and how age gaps impact financial planning. They consider scenarios where their partner retires years before they do, or where health issues require expensive care earlier in the relationship timeline. They think about estate planning, inheritance, and the financial implications of potentially outliving a partner by decades. These practical considerations are part of long-term relationship thinking, but they feel too transactional and unromantic to discuss. Men process them privately and sometimes let them influence decisions without the older woman ever knowing these factors were part of the equation. Men also have thoughts about social life over time. They think about whether age gaps will create social complications as both partners age. They imagine friend groups and social circles and how age differences might impact social integration. They consider future scenarios where their partner's friends are significantly older and their own friends are significantly younger, and whether this creates social friction. They think about how they'll introduce their partner at professional functions in 20 years when age differences are more pronounced. These social considerations are part of men's long-term thinking about relationships with older women, even if they never articulate them. There's a specific thought pattern around regret and alternative timelines. Men think about whether they'll regret choosing an older partner when they're in their 60s and their partner is in their 70s or 80s. They imagine alternative life paths and wonder if they're closing doors by committing to someone significantly older. They consider what their life might look like if they chose a partner closer to their own age. These thoughts about alternative futures are common in all relationship contemplation, but they take on added weight when there's an age gap. Men process these considerations privately, weighing current happiness against imagined future scenarios, and often these internal calculations influence their commitment level in ways their partner never sees or understands. The masculine identity crisis. Let's confront one of the most psychologically complex areas: how being attracted to or involved with older women creates masculine identity issues for men. This is deeply uncomfortable territory that men almost never discuss, even with therapists or close friends. But these thoughts exist and they shape behavior powerfully. When a man finds himself attracted to an older woman, particularly a significantly older woman, it often triggers a cascade of thoughts about what this attraction means for his masculine identity. Society has given men very clear messages about what kinds of attraction are masculine and what kinds suggest weakness or deviation. Let's examine what actually goes through men's minds. Men think about what their attraction to older women says about them psychologically. They've been taught that real men prefer younger women, that youth equals sexual success, that choosing older means settling or indicates inability to attract younger. When men experience genuine attraction to older women, they sometimes wonder if something is wrong with them. Are they weak? Are they seeking a mother figure? Are they afraid of real challenge? These psychological questions haunt men who find themselves drawn to older women. They don't voice these insecurities because admitting them would be admitting to uncertainty about fundamental identity. Instead, they internalize the questions and sometimes avoid older women altogether to avoid confronting uncomfortable self-examination. Here's a specific thought pattern that men experience. They worry about whether attraction to older women means they're not properly masculine. Masculine identity is fragile and based heavily on social validation. If masculine identity requires certain types of attraction and certain types of sexual success, then deviant attractions threaten the entire identity structure. Men think about whether their peers will still see them as men if they're with older women. They worry about being seen as weak, as unable to compete in the youth-oriented dating market, as somehow deficient in masculine appeal. These identity concerns are powerful enough to override genuine attraction and connection. Men will literally choose to be alone rather than pursue relationships that threaten their masculine identity in their peer group. Men think about the provider role and how it's challenged by older women. Traditional masculine identity is built around being the provider, the protector, the stronger one. Older women who have their own resources, their own established lives, their own strength don't need providing or protecting in traditional ways. This leaves men wondering what their role is. If not provider, then what? If not protector, then what? These questions strike at core masculine identity. Men think about what they bring to the relationship, if not traditional masculine utility. They struggle to answer this question because masculine socialization hasn't given them alternative value propositions. So they sit with these identity questions without resolution, often avoiding older women rather than confronting the inadequacy of traditional masculine frameworks. There's a thought pattern around sexual performance and masculine identity that creates acute anxiety. Men think about how sexual encounters with experienced older women will reflect on their masculine capability. They worry about being compared to more experienced partners and being found lacking. They fear that older women will have higher standards, more refined preferences, clearer expectations. This performance anxiety is tied directly to masculine identity because sexual prowess is supposed to be a core masculine trait. Men think about potential failure or inadequacy and what that would mean about them as men. These thoughts create avoidance behavior where men stick with less experienced partners who won't challenge their sexual identity, even when they're attracted to older women. Men also think about leadership and dominance, core components of traditional masculinity. Older women typically don't accept attempts at masculine dominance. They're too experienced, too self-assured, too aware of manipulation tactics. Men think about what it means to be in a relationship where they can't establish traditional masculine dominance. Does that make them less masculine? Are they weak for being with someone they can't dominate? These questions reflect deeply toxic aspects of masculine socialization, but they're what men actually think. They process these thoughts privately, often concluding that relationships with older women threaten their masculine identity by not allowing them to perform traditional masculine dominance. This realization often leads to avoidance rather than evolution. There's another dimension to the masculine identity crisis that men rarely acknowledge: the discomfort with being valued for non-traditional masculine traits. If an older woman is attracted to them for their emotional intelligence, their companionship, their kindness, their intellectual compatibility rather than for their strength, dominance, or providing capability, men sometimes don't know how to process that valuation. Masculine identity has been built around a specific set of valued traits, and being appreciated for different traits can feel disorienting. Men think about whether these alternative valuations are really valuable or whether they represent a lesser form of masculine appeal. These thoughts reveal how deeply conditioning runs and how uncomfortable men become when valued outside traditional masculine frameworks. The hidden admiration. Let's explore something powerful: the genuine admiration men feel for older women that they almost never express. This admiration exists alongside all the fears and insecurities we've discussed, but it's real and it's significant. When men think about older women, particularly those who have built successful lives, developed themselves fully, and moved through the world with confidence, there's often a deep respect and admiration that shapes their perception. Understanding this admiration is crucial because it represents something authentic in male psychology that gets buried under social performance. Let's examine what men genuinely admire about older women, even when they won't say it. Men admire the independence they see in older women. When a woman has built her own life, established her own career, created her own financial security, and developed her own interests and friend groups, men recognize the strength that requires. They think about what it takes to achieve that level of independence and self-sufficiency. They respect it. They're impressed by it. They admire the determination, the competence, the capability it represents. Men think these admirational thoughts regularly when they encounter independent older women, but they don't express them because admiration can be confused with attraction. And attraction to older women raises all the issues we've already discussed. So men keep their admiration private. Here's what men admire but won't openly acknowledge: They respect women who have been through difficulty and emerged stronger. Older women have typically faced challenges, experienced heartbreak, overcome obstacles, and developed resilience. Men see this resilience and recognize its value. They think about what kind of strength it takes to experience loss and keep moving forward. They admire women who have been knocked down and gotten back up. They respect women who have learned from mistakes rather than being destroyed by them. This admiration for resilience is profound, but men rarely express it because it would require vulnerable conversation about difficulty and strength that doesn't fit comfortable social scripts. Men admire the confidence that comes with self-knowledge. Older women who have done the work of understanding themselves, who know their values, who have clear boundaries, who can articulate their needs and desires, embody a type of confidence that men recognize as rare and valuable. They think about how impressive it is to have that level of self-knowledge. They admire the psychological work it represents. They respect women who aren't still figuring out who they are because they've already done that work. Men think these admirational thoughts, but don't voice them because expressing admiration for female confidence can be misinterpreted as weakness or admission of their own lack of confidence. There's a specific admiration for women who don't need male validation. Men respect women who have validated themselves through their accomplishments, their relationships, their personal development, rather than seeking validation from male attention or approval. They think about how powerful it is to witness someone who genuinely doesn't need external validation to feel valuable. They admire the security and self-assurance this represents. But men don't express this admiration because it highlights how many women do seek male validation, and pointing that out feels unkind. Also, admiring women who don't need male validation is a bit like admiring being unnecessary, which is complicated psychologically. Men also admire the emotional intelligence and maturity they see in older women. The ability to handle conflicts maturely, to communicate clearly, to regulate emotions effectively, to show empathy while maintaining boundaries, represents a level of emotional development that men recognize as admirable. They think about how they would benefit from developing similar emotional capabilities. They respect women who have done this developmental work. They admire the relationships and life quality that emotional intelligence enables. But expressing this admiration would require acknowledging their own emotional limitations, which masculine socialization discourages. There's admiration for women who have found their purpose and pursue it passionately. Men respect older women who know what matters to them and structure their lives around those values. Whether it's career, creative pursuits, family, community involvement, or personal development, men admire women who are actively engaged in meaningful work. They think about how impressive it is to witness someone living purposefully rather than drifting. They respect the intentionality and commitment that pursuing purpose requires. But men rarely express this admiration because doing so highlights their own struggles with purpose and meaning, which they're not supposed to admit having. We've journeyed deep into the male mind today, uncovering truths that men think constantly, but rarely, if ever, voice out loud. From the fundamental attraction to competence and confidence, to the hidden sexual desires, to the craving for emotional maturity and authentic communication. From the intimidation by experience to the yearning for genuine partnership, to the social pressures that keep men silent about their attraction to older women. Every insight we've explored reveals the same fundamental truth. What men think about older women is radically different from what society tells you they think. The gap between male thoughts and male speech exists because society has constructed a narrative about desirability that serves commercial interests and perpetuates insecurity. This narrative tells you that youth is your only value, that aging is your enemy, that men only want younger versions of what you once were. But the reality we've uncovered today shows something entirely different. Men are deeply attracted to the qualities that come with age and experience: confidence, emotional intelligence, independence, authenticity, maturity, competence, and self-knowledge. They think about these qualities constantly. They fantasize about relationships built on these foundations. They admire women who embody these characteristics, but they don't say these thoughts out loud because doing so would challenge cultural narratives about masculine identity, would expose vulnerabilities they're taught to hide, would risk social judgment from their peers, and would require them to confront the gap between what they're told they should want and what they actually desire. So they remain silent, keeping their thoughts locked away while they perform according to cultural scripts that don't reflect their genuine psychology. What does this mean for you? It means that your value is not decreasing with age. It's evolving into something that many men find more attractive than youth, even if they can't or won't say so. It means that the qualities you've developed through life experience, the confidence you've built, the emotional maturity you've cultivated, the independence you've established, the authenticity you've embraced, are all profoundly attractive to men, even when culture tells you they're not. It means that you have power you may not have recognized, because that power has been deliberately hidden from you. Understanding what men really think empowers you to see yourself through clearer eyes. You're not competing with younger women for male attention based on their youth advantages. You're offering something entirely different, something that many men desperately want but feel unable to pursue. This knowledge changes the game completely. Instead of feeling diminished by age, you can recognize the advantages that come with experience, maturity, and self-knowledge. Instead of trying to compete on youth's terms, you can own the qualities that make you uniquely valuable. This doesn't mean every man will recognize and pursue these qualities. Many men are too trapped in cultural narratives, too concerned with peer approval, too limited by their conditioning to act on their genuine attractions. But understanding the truth of male psychology means you don't have to accept false narratives about your declining value. You can recognize that men's silence about their attraction to older women says more about their fears and limitations than about your worth. You can move through the world knowing that what you offer is genuinely valued, even when that value isn't loudly proclaimed. The thoughts we've explored today exist in men's minds constantly. The admiration for your resilience, the attraction to your confidence, the desire for your emotional maturity, the appreciation of your authenticity, the respect for your independence, the yearning for the peaceful partnership you could provide. These thoughts are real. They shape male behavior even when they're never spoken. Understanding this hidden psychology gives you power because knowledge is always power. Before we close, I need you to take action. First, hit that like button if this video opened your eyes to truths you needed to hear. Your like helps this message reach more women who need this psychological insight. Second, subscribe to the Heart Code and turn on notifications because we regularly post content that reveals the hidden psychology behind relationships and empowers you with knowledge that transforms your life. Third, comment below and share your thoughts. Have you noticed men displaying the thoughts we discussed today through their actions even when they didn't voice them? Do these insights change how you see yourself and your value? Our community thrives on these conversations. Fourth, and this is important, share this video with every woman in your life who needs to hear this message. Every woman over 40 who has been made to feel invisible or less valuable. Every woman who has internalized the narrative that her worth decreases with age. Every woman who needs to understand the truth about male psychology. Your share could change someone's life by giving them insight that empowers them to see themselves differently. And finally, if you want to support this channel and help us continue creating content, that empowers women with psychological truth, consider leaving a super thanks. Your financial support, no matter the amount, makes it possible for us to keep bringing you this information completely free. It helps us research, script, produce, and share videos that challenge cultural narratives and reveal the truths that transform lives. Every super thanks matters and is deeply appreciated. Remember, the next time you doubt your value or feel diminished by age, recall what we've uncovered today. Men are thinking thoughts about you that they'll never say out loud. Thoughts of admiration, attraction, desire, and respect. Your age is not your limitation. It's your advantage in ways that men can't openly acknowledge but deeply feel. You are more powerful than you've been led to believe. You are more valuable than cultural narratives suggest. You are more attractive than society tells you. These are not affirmations. These are psychological truths about how men actually think, even when they can't or won't say so. Walk into the world knowing this truth. Carry yourself with the confidence that comes from understanding your genuine value. Recognize that men's silence about their attraction to older women reflects their limitations, not yours. And most importantly, never again let anyone convince you that your best years are behind you. Your best years are the ones where you know yourself, own your power, and move through the world with the confidence and authenticity that comes from experience. That's what men think about when they look at you, even when they'll never say it out loud. Thank you for joining me on this journey today. I'll see you in the next video where we continue uncovering the psychology that empowers you to navigate relationships and life with clarity, confidence, and power. Until then, remember your value, own your strength, and never let anyone diminish the incredible person you've become. This is The Heart Code, where we decode the truth that sets you free.